Here we have the standard Buret. Now when you first get a hold of this, there are going to be two on each side, and typically we do A, B. So your Buret on your left side is going to hold your acid, and your Buret on your right side will hold your base, A, B. Our first step is to remove the stopper at the top and set it aside. I like to put it on the side of the Buret stand that I got it from. Now, taking a clean and dry Buret or a conditioned with DI water Buret, I'm going to place the DI water from the Buret into the beaker. Now, here I also like to squeeze the bead a little bit to get all the remaining water out. Now that we've emptied the DI water from the Buret into the beaker, I'm going to begin conditioning. Now, in this case I'll just be using water, but in your class you'll most likely be using a solution of liquid, maybe a base or an acid, to condition your Buret. To begin, I'll take my DI water bottle and, rotating the Buret in my hand, I will squeeze water into the Buret, covering all sides. And I'm going to do this until I get about 10 milliliters of liquid. Okay, about there is good. And next, what I will do is I will rotate it, covering all sides, carefully watching the water level so I don't spill some onto my lab desk. Now over a sink, I will continue. I am twirling the Buret so that the water can completely cover all sides. I'm trying to keep the water level even and not let too much leak out. Once I'm done, I can let it out through the top. Now I'm going to fill the Buret with more of my solution. Again, I am adding just enough to have about 10 milliliters of liquid. Sometimes you're going to use a little bit less, and this is usually during the third or fourth run of conditioning, or if you're running out of solution. So that's about 10 milliliters. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have to get the bubbles out of the bottom to condition this round. But first, I will start by rotating the Buret, as we once did, over a sink. I am rotating it enough so that the water can cover all sides of the Buret, even above 0 milliliters. Now, instead of letting it pour out of the top, I'm going to keep some liquid at the bottom of the Buret. Now we will begin to deal with the bubbles at the bottom of your Buret. Taking a waste beaker, anything that has maybe liquid inside of it, or DI water that you use to just wash it out, I am going to now place it under the Buret tip. I want to be careful that this doesn't touch the edges of the beaker because I don't want any cracking of the tip to be happening here. So let's begin to deal with the bubbles in the Buret. Getting rid of bubbles above the bead of the Buret is easy. All we have to do is squeeze from the bottom of the bubble. As you can see, the major bubble is right here. We're just going to squeeze right below it and watch as it travels up the Buret. Okay. And then for all the little extra ones, we're just going to do the same thing, giving them a good squeeze, but being careful not to squeeze too hard around the bead, or else we might move it. Another useful tip in getting the bubbles above the bead out, if the squeezing doesn't happen to work, you can also flick. This really works with the smaller bubbles, but be careful to hold the bottom of the tip of the Buret so that when you're flicking this, it doesn't hit against your beaker and break anything. Getting rid of bubbles below the bead is a little more tricky. As you can see right here, there is a bubble below this bead. You might be asking, why is it necessary for us to get rid of bubbles? Well, any slight bubble can change the reading on your buret. Getting rid of bubbles below the bead is also possible. To do this, turn this piece around to make a U shape. Now, flick below the bead and note as your bubbles begin to start traveling up towards the tip here. Once you felt you've done this sufficiently, squeeze the bead and dispense some water into your paper towel. You may need to wipe the outside down, and that's okay. Note that all the bubbles below the bead are now gone. Continue this process for 4 times. Condition your buret with your solution, acid, base, or water 4 times. Place about 10 milliliters in there of your solution, rotate it above the sink, dispense liquid through the bead for 4 times. And once this is complete, your buret is usually done being conditioned. Before you begin your titration, add about a half drop to the tip of your buret and tap it to the outside of your beaker. This allows no bubbles to exist in the tip of the buret. Once you've done this, you're ready to start titrating. To dispense liquid, we're going to squeeze the side of the bead. Don't squeeze above and don't squeeze below, but rather the side. I like to go from the left side, and by just squeezing, you note that we are dispensing liquid. This is a great way to control your speed. You can dispense very quickly or relatively slowly, as you should be. And sometimes when you're very near the end point, you can add just a quarter of a drop to the side of your beaker or your Erlenmeyer flask and rinse it down with DI water.